The alien woman read the human's journal and didn't turn away from the truth. Captain Nathan Hayes sat quietly in his quarters aboard the Alliance cruiser Horizon, the hum of the engine a steady background to his thoughts. His hands rested on the small, worn journal in front of him, a personal possession he never let anyone see. It was his secret, his place to write down the raw emotions he didn't dare show anyone else. The weight of Earth's destruction, the wars, the people he lost, he carried it all within him. Humanity had suffered through the collapse of their planet, a planet ravaged by war, poverty, and an endless struggle to survive. Nathan, like so many others, had lost family, friends, and the very future he had once believed in. He had joined the United Earth Coalition in the hope of rebuilding, of finding a new purpose beyond the ashes of his home world. But even now, years later, the pain of his past lingered. The Horizon was on a peacekeeping mission in Zaire space, a part of the galaxy known for its harsh and efficient diplomacy. The Zaire were a species of towering, gray-skinned beings who prided themselves on their cold, logical approach to life. They didn't understand emotion the way humans did. To them, feelings were weaknesses. Strength came from intellect, control, and power. Asha, the Zaire ambassador assigned to the Horizon, had been an enigma from the moment they met. She was sharp, intelligent, and very different from the humans Nathan had grown up with. While most of the Zaire valued their military prowess and their belief in superiority, Asha had shown curiosity about humanity. She asked questions, observed with interest, and seemed eager to learn about Earth's history and the nature of its people. At first, Nathan had been wary of Asha. He had always been cautious around aliens, especially those like the Zaire, who believed in using force to maintain order. But over time, he found her to be different. There was something about her, a quiet strength and a thirst for knowledge that set her apart from the others of her kind. Still, Nathan kept his personal feelings locked away. The pain of his past was something he couldn't share with anyone, not even Asha. He feared she wouldn't understand. One evening, after a long day of tense discussions and negotiations with other alien diplomats, Nathan retired to his quarters. He placed the journal on his desk, his fingers lingering over the pages. The words inside were his escape, his place of solitude where he could be completely honest, even if only with himself. His thoughts turned to the past, his childhood in the war-torn cities of Earth, the day the bombs fell, and the day he joined the military to fight for what remained of humanity. But tonight, as he reached for his journal, he noticed something strange. The book was slightly out of place, as if someone had moved it. His heart skipped a beat. It was rare for anyone to enter his private space without his permission, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. It wasn't until he noticed the faint scent of Asha's perfume lingering in the air that he realized what had happened. Asha had been in his room. She had read his journal. For a moment, panic gripped him. What if she had read something too personal? What if she had seen the raw, unfiltered truth of his memories, of the things he could never share with anyone else? Nathan was a professional. He had kept his emotions in check for years. But the idea of Asha reading his thoughts, his very soul, left him feeling exposed in a way he hadn't imagined. Nathan stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. He could confront her, demand to know why she'd gone through his private belongings. But something in him stopped him. He had always been cautious, but this time, a small part of him wanted to understand why she had felt the need to read his journal. What had she seen in those pages that had drawn her in? Later that night, after the evening's duties were done, Asha came to his quarters. She stood at the door, her expression unreadable. Her tall, imposing figure filled the doorway, yet there was something softer in her eyes, something Nathan had never seen before. "I read your journal," Asha said, her voice calm but firm. "I hope you don't mind." Nathan's heart raced. "You read my journal?" he asked, his tone a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Asha nodded. "I couldn't help it. You've been different lately, Nathan. I sensed something in you, a kind of weight, and when I found your journal, I thought it might explain." Nathan's mind raced. There were so many things he could say, so many reasons why it wasn't okay for her to have read his personal thoughts. But before he could speak, Asha continued. "I've never read anything like it before," she said softly. "Your words, they carry so much pain, and yet there's a kind of strength in it, too. I've never known a species to endure so much. Your people, humans, are resilient." Nathan swallowed hard. "You don't understand, you can't, you don't know what we've been through." Asha took a step closer, her gaze steady. I understand more than you think, Nathan. I know what it's like to lose something. To feel as though everything you've ever known is slipping away. I've seen it in my own people, the way we suppress our emotions, the way we hide our weaknesses. But you put it all down. You don't hide from your truth. Nathan took a deep breath. He wanted to push her away, to deny her words, but something in her gaze stopped him. It was as if, for the first time, Asha wasn't seeing him as just another human diplomat. She saw him, truly saw him. "Why did you read it?" he asked quietly, his voice hoarse. Asha hesitated for a moment. "Because I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand how your people can endure such hardship and still move forward. My people, the Zaire, we don't understand that. We rely on logic and strength, not emotions. But there's something about you, Nathan. Your resilience, it's different, and I wanted to know why." Nathan met her gaze, his heart heavy. He hadn't expected this, to be understood, especially not by someone like Asha, but in that moment he realized something. She wasn't just reading his journal. She was trying to understand him, to understand humanity. And for the first time in a long while, Nathan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for the humans and the Zaire to find common ground. Maybe there was a way for them to learn from one another. "I wrote that journal because I needed to," Nathan said, his voice steady. "It's the only way I know how to process what we've been through, but there's more to it than just the pain. There's hope, too. Despite everything, humans don't give up. We keep fighting. We keep going." Asha's eyes softened. "I can see that now," she said, "and perhaps we could learn something from you." Nathan nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Asha had read his journal, and instead of turning away, she had come closer. She had chosen to understand. And in that moment, Nathan realized that maybe the future didn't have to be shaped by the ghosts of the past. Maybe it could be something new, something built on trust and understanding. And maybe, just maybe, humanity could teach the galaxy that even in the darkest of times, there was always a light that refused to go out. The days that followed the confrontation in Nathan's quarters were tense, but there was a shift in the air. Asha no longer regarded him with the same distant curiosity. There was a new understanding between them. It was subtle at first, a quiet nod during meetings, an unspoken acknowledgement that they were no longer simply allies by duty, but something more. Their conversations, once strictly professional, began to drift toward personal matters, often with Asha asking questions about humanity's history and Nathan answering, not with the detachment of a diplomat, but with the passion of someone who had lived through it all. Nathan couldn't help but notice the change. He had never expected Asha to truly understand the depths of his people's pain. She was Zaire, a species known for their absolute control, for their belief that emotions were weaknesses that had no place in the galaxy. Yet here she was, standing beside him, no longer just a diplomat from another world, but someone who seemed to understand the weight of what humanity had survived. He hadn't expected this, especially not after she'd read his journal. But what was even more surprising was the way Asha responded. Rather than distancing herself, she sought to learn more. She asked him about his childhood, his memories of Earth before the wars. She wanted to know why humans seemed so determined to rise from the ashes time and time again, even when everything appeared lost. Nathan wasn't sure how to respond to that question at first. How did you explain the human drive to survive? How did you explain the way people found hope, even when the world seemed hopeless? For so long, he had kept those answers buried, even from himself. But Asha made him think about them in ways he hadn't before. The more he spoke to her, the more he realized how much he had never truly understood his own resilience. One evening, after a long day of tense talks with the various alien factions on the ship, Nathan and Asha found themselves alone in the observation room. The stars stretched out before them, an endless sea of light in the dark void of space. Nathan leaned against the window, his eyes tracing the constellations he had come to know so well, while Asha stood at a distance, her gaze focused on the stars as well. "Do you ever wonder why we're here?" Asha's voice broke the silence, soft but full of curiosity. Nathan turned to her. "Here, in space, or here in this galaxy?" "Here," she said, gesturing to the vastness outside the window. "In this moment. Among all these stars, all these species. I've been thinking about your people, the way you survive, the way you keep fighting even when the odds are against you. It's not just your technology, Nathan, it's something more." Nathan thought about her words for a moment. "You're asking why humans don't give up?" "Yes," she replied. The Zaire are strong, but we value control above all. Power, if we lose that control, we lose everything. But humans, you seem to find strength in your losses. You fight not because you are the strongest, but because you refuse to surrender, even to death. Nathan's gaze dropped to the floor as he thought about what she said. It wasn't the first time he had heard something like it. People, especially those who didn't understand humanity, often saw the resilience of humans as a form of stubbornness, of sheer force of will. But Ashaz's words were different. There was something in her voice, a respect, maybe even admiration, that made Nathan pause. "I don't know if we have an answer to that," he said quietly, turning back to the stars. "Maybe it's because we've lost so much that we can't afford to stop fighting. There's this thing inside us, this will to survive. It doesn't make sense all the time, but it's there. It's what drives us forward, even when everything seems impossible." Ashad took a few steps closer, her eyes never leaving him. "I don't understand it," she admitted, "but I want to know what drives you." Nathan smiled faintly, the old pain still flickering in his eyes. "It's not always pretty. We're not always heroes, Ashad. Sometimes we just do what we have to do to keep going, and sometimes we get lucky." Ashad's gaze softened, and for the first time Nathan saw something in her eyes that wasn't just curiosity, but something deeper. It was as though she was seeing him, not just as a human, not just as a diplomat, but as a person. As someone who had endured the kind of loss she could only begin to understand. "You're not just lucky, Nathan," Ashad said, her voice steady. "You're strong, and so are your people. I see it now. You don't give up because you don't believe in defeat. You believe in the possibility of rebuilding." The words hung in the air, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Nathan felt a knot in his chest loosen, the tension from days of silent reflection slowly unwinding. There was something in Ashad's tone that told him she wasn't just speaking out of respect anymore. She had come to see humanity not just as another species, but as something admirable. The next day, the horizon arrived at the Zaire homeworld. The planet was a sight to behold, with its towering structures made of reflective silver metal and vast cityscapes that stretched far beyond the horizon. The Zaire were a species of few words, but their cities spoke volumes of their history, an ancient people who had long since mastered the art of survival through intellect and power. Nathan and Ashad were expected at the Zaire Council, a meeting that would be the culmination of months of delicate negotiations. The stakes were high. The peace between the Zaire and several other galactic factions was fragile, and one wrong move could unravel everything. But for Nathan, it felt different this time. It wasn't just the pressure of diplomacy weighing on him. It was the quiet bond he had begun to form with Ashad, a bond that made the weight of the mission feel just a little bit lighter. When they entered the council hall, the other delegates, representatives from various species, fell silent. The Zaire, always formal, regarded Nathan with the cool detachment they were known for, but Ashad's presence at his side was different. She had stood by him during the talks, taking his advice seriously, listening to his insights. For the first time, Nathan felt as if he was not just a human diplomat among strangers, but someone who had earned his place at the table. The council began, and Ashad did not hesitate to speak. She addressed the room, her voice calm and measured as she outlined the importance of unity between the species, a message that she had absorbed from Nathan. The Zaire had always prided themselves on their independence, on their power. But Ashad now spoke of something different: cooperation, trust, and the strength that could come from not just conquering the galaxy, but from understanding it. As the meeting progressed, Nathan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. It wasn't just that Ashad was representing her people well, she was speaking for something greater. She was speaking for the idea that understanding one another was the only way forward. He could see the subtle shift in the room, the way the other delegates listened more intently to her, the way the Zaire seemed to soften just a little. After the meeting, Ashad pulled Nathan aside. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said quietly, her voice laced with genuine gratitude. "You've shown me a new way of thinking, a way that doesn't just rely on strength, but on unity." Nathan smiled. "You've done it, Ashad. You found the strength in understanding." Ashad looked up at him, a glimmer of something new in her eyes. "Maybe humanity isn't just resilient, Nathan. Maybe you're the ones who are teaching us all how to survive in a different way." Nathan stood there for a moment, looking at the stars through the council hall's massive windows. Ashad had changed, he realized. She was no longer the Zaire diplomat who had once seen humanity as weak. She was someone who had come to understand the quiet strength that ran deep in human nature. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan felt the flicker of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the future could be different. Not just for humanity, but for all species. The days that followed were filled with tension, but also with an unexpected sense of purpose. The peace talks between the Zaire and the other factions were entering their final stages, and with each passing hour, the pressure to reach an agreement only increased. The fate of countless planets, species, and future generations hung in the balance. But in the midst of all this, something shifted between Nathan and Asha. It wasn't just about diplomacy anymore. It wasn't just about the formalities of meetings or the weight of political alliances. Somewhere along the way, as they worked side by side, something deeper had formed. Asha's curiosity about humanity had transformed into a genuine respect for Nathan's strength and resilience. And Nathan, despite his initial reluctance to let anyone in, had begun to see Asha in a new light. No longer just an alien diplomat, but a person struggling with her own challenges and fears, just like him. One evening, after a particularly difficult session with the council, Nathan found himself standing alone in the observation deck of the horizon. The stars glittered like diamonds in the vastness of space, each one a silent witness to the conflicts and struggles that had shaped the galaxy. He leaned against the cool glass, his thoughts drifting back to Earth, to the people he had lost, to the lives he had watched burn away in the fires of war. There were moments when the weight of it all seemed unbearable. He didn't notice Asha approaching until she was standing beside him, her gaze fixed on the same stars. She didn't speak at first, and Nathan was grateful for the silence. It wasn't that he didn't want to talk, it was just that sometimes words didn't seem enough. Sometimes it felt like the universe was too vast, too indifferent to care about the pain that humans carried. "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it?" Nathan asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Asha turned to him, her brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Surviving," Nathan said, pushing himself off the window and turning to face her. "We've been through so much, the wars, the destruction, the loss. It feels like we've been fighting for so long, but sometimes I wonder if we're just spinning our wheels. If it's all for nothing." Asha studied him for a moment, her alien eyes searching his face as if trying to decipher the depths of his pain. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she placed a hand on the railing, her fingers curling around it, as if grounding herself to the moment. "I think it's worth it," she said finally. "Even when everything seems impossible, even when it feels like you're losing, I think it's worth it. Because the alternative is giving up, and giving up means you're already defeated." Nathan looked at her, surprised by the conviction in her voice. "You don't think it's hopeless, after everything we've been through, everything I've seen?" "No," Asha said, shaking her head. "I think you've seen more than most can imagine, Nathan, but you're still here, you're still fighting, that means something." Nathan swallowed hard. "I don't know if I'm fighting anymore," he admitted. "I'm just trying to survive. Trying to make sense of all the things I've lost." Asha didn't respond right away, but her gaze softened. She stepped closer, her presence comforting in a way Nathan hadn't expected. "You've been through more than I could ever understand, Nathan. Your people, they've suffered in ways we Zaire can't even comprehend. But I see now why you keep going. You don't just fight because you have to. You fight because there's something worth fighting for." Nathan looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Asha began slowly, "that your people don't fight for power or for domination. You fight for each other. You fight to protect what matters to you. And that's something I admire. It's something that I think we could learn from." Her words hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. He had never thought of it that way. He had always seen humanity's survival as a simple act of stubbornness, of grit. But hearing Asha's perspective made him see it differently. It wasn't just about surviving the next battle or winning the next war. It was about protecting the people you loved, the ones who mattered most to you. It was about the small things, the moments of kindness, of sacrifice, of human connection, that gave life meaning. He looked at her, his voice quiet. "I don't know if I've ever seen it like that before." Asha gave him a small, knowing smile. "Sometimes it takes someone else to show you the things you've been too close to see." They stood there in silence for a moment, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The stars outside seemed to shimmer more brightly now, as if the universe itself had taken a deep breath, waiting for something to change. As the days passed, the peace talks continued, and the pressure to reach an agreement only increased. But now, with Asha by his side, Nathan found himself more determined than ever to see this through. It wasn't just for humanity anymore. It was for the possibility of something better, something more than endless conflict. It was for the idea that, despite everything they had been through, there was still hope for the future. One afternoon, after a long and grueling negotiation session, Nathan and Asha found themselves walking together through the corridors of the horizon. The air was thick with the tension of the talks, but there was a brief moment of respite as they walked in companionable silence. "So what happens if this peace doesn't work?" Asha asked, her voice breaking the silence. "What if the other factions refuse to agree?" Nathan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Then we fight, again, but I'm hoping it doesn't come to that." Asha stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. "Do you ever think about what it would be like if your people didn't have to fight anymore, if peace was possible?" Nathan's mind raced. The idea seemed almost impossible, after everything humanity had been through, after the wars, the loss, the endless cycle of violence. But as he looked into Asha's eyes, something inside him shifted. Maybe peace wasn't as far-fetched as it seemed. Maybe, just maybe, it was worth fighting for. "I used to think it was impossible," he said, his voice low. "I thought that war was just part of who we are, but now I don't know. Maybe peace is possible, but we have to be willing to work for it, all of us." Asha nodded, her gaze intense. "I agree, and I think you're right, it's worth fighting for." In that moment, Nathan realized something. The true strength of humanity wasn't just in its ability to survive, but in its capacity for hope. No matter how many times they were knocked down, no matter how many wars they fought, humans always found a way to keep going. They found a way to hope, to rebuild, to fight for a better future. And as Nathan stood there looking at Asha, he knew that he wasn't alone in this fight. They weren't just allies anymore, they were friends. And together they might just have a chance to bring about the change they both desperately sought. The next day, the final round of negotiations began. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure was unbearable. But Nathan felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. Asha stood by his side, her unwavering support and newfound understanding giving him the strength he needed to face the challenge ahead. It wasn't just about the negotiations anymore. It was about something much bigger. It was about the future of all species in the galaxy, and the hope that, together, they could find a way to live in peace. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan felt that peace wasn't as impossible as it once seemed. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to end the cycle of war. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could lead the way. The days that followed the intense negotiations were filled with a growing sense of urgency. The factions involved in the peace talks had agreed to meet one last time, a final effort to forge an alliance that could bring stability to the galaxy. The stakes were high, and the weight of the future seemed to rest on Nathan and Asha's shoulders. But despite the pressure, something within Nathan had shifted. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about changing the future. And for the first time in a long while, he believed it was possible. Nathan spent long hours in his quarters, poring over reports and preparing for the final meeting. His mind raced with possibilities, weighing every word, every gesture. The galaxy was watching, and the peace of countless species hung in the balance. He knew the consequences of failure. He had seen the destruction that war could bring. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of what might come. Instead, he was focused on what needed to happen, on the possibility of change. Asha, too, had been busy, but she seemed different. There was a calm about her now, an understanding of the challenges that lay ahead. She no longer viewed humanity as a species to be studied from a distance, but as an equal partner in this fragile endeavor. She had learned to see the strength in humans, not just in their ability to survive, but in their ability to grow, to adapt, to change. And in Nathan, she had found a reflection of that strength, a quiet resolve that had begun to inspire her in ways she hadn't expected. As the final meeting drew near, Nathan and Asha found themselves walking the corridors of the horizon, the ship now a home of sorts for them both. The air was thick with anticipation, but there was also a sense of solidarity between them, a bond that had been forged through countless conversations, shared moments of vulnerability, and a mutual respect that had grown stronger with time. "You seem calm," Nathan remarked, glancing at Asha as they walked side by side. Asha smiled faintly. "I've learned to embrace the uncertainty," she said. There's no point in worrying about things you can't control. Nathan nodded. I used to think that way, too. But now I wonder if we can control it, at least a little bit. If we work together, we might just have a chance. They reached the doors to the council chamber, and Asha paused. You've given me more than just hope, Nathan, she said quietly. You've shown me a way forward. I didn't understand it at first, but now I see. Nathan felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't used to hearing such words. For so long, he had believed that hope was something fleeting, something that disappeared as quickly as it came. But Asha's words reminded him of something important. That hope wasn't just about surviving. It was about building something better, something that could stand the test of time. As the council meeting began, the room was filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The tension in the air was palpable, but Nathan stood tall, his mind focused on the task at hand. This wasn't just about human survival. This was about the future of all species, about finding common ground in a galaxy that had known too much conflict. The discussions were intense, as expected. There were moments when the arguments seemed to spiral into chaos, when it seemed as though the negotiations might break down completely. But each time, Nathan found himself looking to Asha and she to him. They had become a team, working in sync, guiding the others back to the table, reminding them of the stakes, reminding them of what was at risk. As the hours wore on, Nathan could see the fatigue in the faces around the table. The other delegates were tired, their patience thinning. But Nathan and Asha pushed forward, each word carefully chosen, each argument made with the hope of bringing everyone together. At one point, as the discussion reached a boiling point, a delegate from the Threlian Federation, an insectoid species known for their harsh tactics, spoke up, his voice cold and cutting. Why should we trust these humans? They've shown no respect for the balance of power in the galaxy. Why should we lay down our weapons for them? Nathan's heart raced. He had expected this challenge. The Threlians were known for their distrust of humans, for their belief that power was the only thing that mattered. But he had to keep calm. He couldn't afford to lose his temper now. Because we're willing to listen, Nathan said, his voice steady. Because we're willing to work with you. We're not here to take control, to dominate. We're here to build something lasting, something that benefits all of us. Asha stepped forward, her voice strong and unwavering. Humanity has suffered. You've heard the stories, the history of what we've been through. But we're still here, still standing. And we've learned something through our struggles. We've learned that strength isn't just about power. It's about unity. It's about understanding each other, even when we don't always agree. The room fell silent. Nathan could feel the weight of Asha's words hanging in the air. This wasn't just about politics. It was about the future of all species, about finding a way to live together without fear, without the constant threat of war. After a long pause, the Threlian delegate spoke again, his voice quieter this time. You speak of unity. But how can we trust that you'll keep your word? How can we trust that humans won't betray us as they have in the past? Nathan looked directly at the delegate, meeting his gaze without hesitation. We don't ask you to trust us blindly. We're asking for the chance to prove ourselves. We know we've made mistakes in the past, but we're trying to build something better, and we're asking you to be a part of it. Asha nodded in agreement. We all have our histories, our scars. But it's how we move forward that matters. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future together. The room was still, the tension hanging thick in the air. But then, one by one, the other delegates began to speak, their voices soft at first, then growing more confident as they joined the conversation. The arguments continued, but they were no longer about who had the most power, who could dominate. They were about finding common ground, about understanding each other's fears and hopes. Hours passed, and the meeting dragged on into the night. But finally, as the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows of the council hall, a consensus was reached. The peace agreement was signed, and the galaxy, for the first time in generations, was given a chance at peace. As the delegates stood to leave, Nathan and Asha exchanged a look. They had done it. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, still obstacles to overcome. But for the first time, the future seemed possible. I couldn't have done this without you, Asha said quietly, her voice full of sincerity. Nathan smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. We couldn't have done it without each other. As they walked out of the council hall together, side by side, Nathan realized that the peace they had just secured wasn't just for the galaxy. It was for them, too. It was a symbol of the trust they had built, of the hope they had created together. And as the stars outside shimmered in the distance, Nathan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Maybe humanity wasn't alone in this fight after all. Maybe, together with allies like HFY, they could build a future that was worth fighting for. The days following the peace agreement felt surreal to Nathan. The galaxy, long trapped in the cycle of war and distrust, had finally taken its first step toward a new chapter. The peace talks had been grueling, the challenges immense, but in the end they had succeeded. Species who had once seen each other as enemies had agreed to sit together, to work toward something greater than themselves. And in the heart of it all, Nathan had found something he had never expected: hope. For so long, he had carried the weight of Earth's history on his shoulders, the memories of wars and loss shaping his every decision. But now, as the peace treaty was being signed, as the representatives from across the galaxy shook hands, Nathan felt something he hadn't felt in years: the possibility of a future. Not just for humanity, but for all the species that shared the galaxy. He stood on the observation deck of the horizon, staring out at the stars as the ship cruised toward its next destination. His mind was still processing everything that had happened. He had never imagined that his journey would lead him here, to a place where he could look at the galaxy not as a battlefield, but as a home to protect. And yet here he was. HFY stepped up beside him, her presence calm, steady. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood together, watching the vast expanse of space that stretched before them. The quiet between them was comfortable, a shared understanding that neither needed to break. They had come a long way together, and there was no need for words to express what they both felt. "You did it," HFY said softly, her voice breaking the silence. "We did it." Nathan smiled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "We did," he agreed. "It's hard to believe, honestly. After everything, it feels like a dream." HFY nodded, her eyes on the stars. "I know what you mean. It's strange, isn't it, to think that we could actually change things, that we could build something better." Nathan's gaze shifted to her, and for a moment he saw the same quiet strength in her that he had seen from the very beginning. HFY had been through her own battles, her own struggles, and yet she had remained steadfast. She had not just listened to humanity's story, she had embraced it, and in doing so she had helped lead the galaxy to a place of peace. "Do you think it'll last?" Nathan asked, his voice low. "This peace, I mean, it's one thing to make an agreement, but what happens after? When the dust settles, when everyone goes back to their homes." HFY turned to him, her eyes thoughtful. "I think peace is a process. It's not something you can just sign into existence and hope it holds. But I believe we've given them a reason to believe it's possible. If we keep working together, if we keep fighting for it, then yes, I think it will last." Nathan looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe her words. Perhaps peace wasn't just an idea, maybe it was something real, something they could build together. "It's strange," Nathan said after a moment. "Before all this, I never really thought about what peace could mean. I was too focused on surviving, on just getting through each day. But now I'm starting to see it differently. Maybe survival isn't just about holding on. Maybe it's about finding a way to live, to truly live without fear." HFY smiled, a quiet warmth in her expression. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? Learning to live without fear. I think that's something we all need to do. We're all afraid of something, Nathan, but that doesn't mean we have to let fear control us." Nathan nodded, his thoughts drifting back to Earth, to the years he had spent fighting, to the years he had spent just trying to survive. He had never really stopped to think about what it would feel like to live without the constant pressure of war, without the weight of fear hanging over him. But now, as he stood beside HFY, he felt a flicker of something new, the possibility of peace, not just for the galaxy, but for himself. "You've changed, too," Nathan said suddenly, turning to face her. "I don't think you would have said that before. You didn't see humans the way you do now." HFY met his gaze, her expression softening. "I didn't understand. I thought I did, but I didn't. I thought your people were just fighters, just survivors. But now I see that there's something more. You fight not just to survive, but to protect each other, to build something worth living for. That's something I admire." Nathan's chest tightened at her words. He had never thought of humanity's strength in those terms. He had always seen it as a weakness, something that held them back from truly understanding the world. But HFY had helped him see it differently. Humanity's strength wasn't just in its ability to survive. It was in its ability to care, to protect, to keep moving forward despite the odds. "I think you've taught me more than I've taught you," Nathan admitted with a wry smile. Asha raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "I doubt that, but I do think we've both learned a lot along the way." They fell into a comfortable silence once more, both of them lost in thought. The stars outside the ship seemed to shine brighter, as if reflecting the hope that was now filling the void between them. The galaxy, once divided and fractured, was starting to come together. There were still challenges ahead, still conflicts to resolve, but for the first time in a long while, Nathan believed it could be done. Together, they had made a difference. Together, they had shown that peace was possible. As the horizon continued its journey through the stars, Nathan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Not just for what they had achieved, but for what they had yet to accomplish. The peace treaty was only the beginning. There was so much more to be done, so much more to learn. But for the first time, Nathan wasn't afraid of the future. For the first time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Asha spoke again, breaking the silence. "You know, Nathan, I've been thinking. Maybe this is just the beginning. Maybe humanity can help show the galaxy what it means to build something lasting, something that stands the test of time." Nathan turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean?" Asha smiled, her eyes alight with a quiet determination. "You've taught me that survival isn't just about strength or power. It's about understanding, about finding common ground. I think humanity has something to teach us all." Nathan was speechless for a moment. "I never thought I'd hear a Zaire say something like that." Asha chuckled softly. "Well, you've made a believer out of me, Nathan, and maybe, just maybe, we can make believers out of everyone else." The thought hung in the air between them, a promise of what the future could be. They had come so far, and there was still so much more to do. But with each other's support, they had proven that change was possible. Together, they had shown the galaxy that even in the darkest times, there was always a way forward. And it was a way that led toward peace, toward understanding, and toward a future where all species could live side by side, not as enemies but as partners. As the horizon sailed through the stars, Nathan finally allowed himself to relax. For the first time in years, he felt like he could truly breathe. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges were many. But for the first time, he believed in the possibility of a future without war. He believed in the possibility of peace. And he knew, with Asha by his side, that they would face whatever came next together.